So as failure is the opportunity to begin again with more experience and wisdom, right? It's a learning lesson, right? So it's not I hit a wall. It's a speed bump. It's a curve in the road. It's something I can learn from. What are the learning lessons and what am I going to do differently to move forward? That's that's how I view it. And so it doesn't stop me. It makes you pause for a minute so that you can take the learning lessons from it. But once you take the learning lessons from it, now you know what you can focus on moving forward and you just take the next steps. So that's what's helped me tremendously.
Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast helping DIY marketers find your micro influencer magic so you attract raving fans and repeat buyers. I'm your host, Nesbitt-Rodarte, and this week I'm joined by B2B revenue accelerator Tim Fitzpatrick. Tim is an entrepreneur / business owner with marketing and growth expertise. He has 20 years of entrepreneurial experience with a passion for developing and growing businesses. That passion served him well in operating and managing a wholesale distribution company he co-owned for 9 years before being acquired in 2005. Since then, he's had failures and successes. He started Rialto Marketing in 2013 and has been helping B2B professional service firms that want to accelerate revenue growth and attract more ideal clients. He believes marketing shouldn't be difficult, but you must remove your revenue roadblocks if you want to grow consistently and predictably. Welcome, Tim.
Candace, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's hear your story. How did you get to where you are?
I'll try to make a long story short. So you kind of touched on it when I graduated from college. I was a math major. I had no idea what the hell I wanted to do, but I had always been good at math and figured, gosh, it's applied all over the place, so it's going to serve me well in some way, shape, or form. And my dad had been an entrepreneur for a long time. He was a manufacturer's rep, which basically means he was a middleman. He was representing manufacturers and selling their products to dealers that were buying it. And a few years before I graduated, he started a wholesale distribution company that was related to that business. And when I graduated, I knew he needed some help. He had no full-time employees in the distribution company at that point. And I said, hey, why don't I work for you for the summer? And, I'll help you out. It'll give me some time to kind of figure out what my next steps are going to be. And so that's kind of how things started. But after 3 months, Candace, I was hooked. Like, I was loving what I was doing. Because I was the first full-time employee, I was shipping, I was receiving, I was accounts payable, I was selling. And I loved what we were selling. We were selling consumer electronics, home theater equipment. So it was just, it was toys, right? And I loved it. And so at the end of 3 months, I said, hey, if you'll have me, I would love to keep doing this. And fortunately, he agreed. He had another partner who was more of a silent partner in the business at that time. He trusted me. And I eventually became a partner. I was doing the distribution thing. He was managing the rep company. And we grew an average of 60% a year before we sold in 2005. And then we both stayed on with the company that bought us for another 3 years. So, that was my start to my professional career. I was extremely fortunate to be in a position like that. I learned a ton. And when I got out of that, which was in 2009-ish, so we got bought by a public company. I stayed on with the company at the end of my 3-year contract, but we all know what happened in 2008, 2009. And they started freaking out and really managing based on quarterly financials. And in 2009, they cut 30% of the branch locations we had across the country. So I got laid off. And at that time, I was like, well, what's going to be next for me? This is all I know at this point. And so I completely went a different direction and I got into residential real estate. I had always been interested in it. And so I jumped in with both feet and I started door knocking houses that were in foreclosure and started to do short sale business. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it in the beginning. Near the end, I was waking up every day going, I can't believe I got to do this all over again. And it was honestly, it was a nightmare. I was not enjoying it. And I said, look, this is pointless. Why own a business when you're waking up feeling like this every day? So I switched gears again, and I took a little bit of time just kind of think about what I really loved about being in the distribution business, where my skill sets were. And that's when I got involved in marketing, which has been a winding road as well. And it's taken me a while to find what I really enjoy within marketing, because it's so broad. But that's what I'm doing today. And, now we're providing marketing consulting and fractional chief marketing officer services to B2B professional service firms that need marketing leadership to accelerate growth, but they just want to do it without the full-time cost. So that's the short story.
That's pretty short. All right, we need two definitions for the audience. One, the first definition is what's a short sale, and the second definition is what's fractional marketing.
Yeah. So, a short sale is when a homeowner works with the bank to get approval to sell their house for less than what they owe. So in that time frame, in that 2008 to 2010 time frame, even into the 11 and 2012, there was still a lot of short sales because people had bought at the height of the market. They were highly leveraged, right? So they owed a ton of money. They didn't put a lot down. And when the market crashed in some places 40, 50%, they found themselves owing more than the house was worth. And when they couldn't make the payments, they were going to go into foreclosure. And short selling was certainly a better option than letting the house go to foreclosure.
Well, for those who don't remember 2008, 2009, they also had this thing called ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages,
yes,
which really screwed over those home buyers who put little to no money down on their homes.
Yeah.
So let's hope that never happens again.
Let's hope not. But what I will say is most of us have very short-term memories. So
yeah,
we tend to forget what we've learned in the past.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then fractional marketing.
Fractional is basically part-time, right? It's a fraction of what you would for full-time. So, there are plenty of businesses and fractional services, not just within marketing, but in other areas of our business, whether it's finance, operations, HR, marketing, sales. Hiring somebody on a part-time basis that has that executive level experience is a great stepping stone, because there are a lot of businesses that need that executive level help, but they're not ready to bite off an executive level salary full-time, nor does it make any sense to do so. So that's with fractional, we're jumping in as a chief marketing officer, but we're doing it on a part-time basis, not full-time.
That's brilliant. The other industry that does it a lot is financial, like CFOs, fractional CFOs, because really, do you need somebody to oversee all of your finances 40 hours a week? No, when your business is small, you probably just need that like 5 hours a week, honestly. And that's if you haven't learned how to read your own business statement and your financials. If you don't know how to, that's a whole nother conversation that we could have. Okay. Yeah. So I'm really interested in your background because it sort of parallels mine very little, but there's a little parallel. I worked in the outdoor industry. I was an inside sales rep. So I partnered with an outside sales rep like you would have been with your father. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot from that experience about how to set up my small business. So my husband and I, we launched a custom furniture business in 1999. And how we pivoted in 2008 was we tripled our prices and changed our demographic. So there's everything there. You can overcome every obstacle. You just have to think outside the box. And who would have thunk tripling your prices would have been the solution? But it changed who we marketed to, right?
Yes, it did.
Are you tired of struggling with follow-up? Do you want to stand out from the crowd but find it difficult to do so in a convenient and easy way? Look no further than Send Out Cards. With Send Out Cards, you can easily stay in touch with those who matter most, celebrate important events, and stay top of mind with just a few clicks on your computer or taps on your phone. In today's world of overflowing inboxes and empty mailboxes, Send Out Cards provides a personal touch that people truly appreciate. Don't get lost in the sea of technology. Go old school with Send Out Cards. Check out the link in the show notes to send your first card free on me, or visit momgeek.com/cards. There are so many nuggets of goodness that you can take away from the manufacturing sale, this independent sales rep manufacturing model that, I mean, really, without that experience and my background, I don't think our furniture business would have done as well as it did, because I had so much knowledge on how to deal with dealers and how to set out my pricing, even how to do my SKUs. Do you want to talk about what small business owners who don't have that kind of background maybe need to know from that point
Oh
of view?
man. I think what's probably most appropriate from that experience that people will find extremely valuable is, I'll share a few things that I learned from it. One, having systems in place and processes, super, super important. When it was just me, everything was in my head, right? But as we started to expand, we had multiple facilities, we had employees. You got to take all that stuff that's in your head and get it down on paper and make it really easy to start putting people in the right seats. That was look, I'm a numbers person, so like that side of me came, I think, pretty naturally, but it had to be done, and that was super, super helpful. The other thing that really drove our business outside of being in the business at the right time, at this time frame, flat panel televisions, were just coming out, and it's easy for people to forget. At this time, a 50-inch plasma, which was a flat panel, was retailing for $15,000 at that time. And we were selling.
And I think at that time you could also buy a car for $15,000.
But you could have bought a lower end car, a nice used car for $15,000. They were retailing for $15,000, and we were shipping these every single day. So the market was very strong, but we also capitalized on what was going on in the market. And what drove that were the relationships that my dad had from 30 years in the rep business. Because all of the manufacturers' reps across the country, and in consumer electronics, the manufacturers' reps have territories. So we were in the Northern California territory, there was Southern California, the Rocky Mountains, so on and so forth. But he had known and nurtured relationships with other reps in other territories for years. And, my dad was well respected. He was seen as somebody of extremely high integrity. So he had great relationships. And one of the reps down in Southern California, as most reps started to open distribution companies, because there was a shift in the market to custom installation and home theater installs. So prior to that, home audio dealers, people would walk in there and say, hey, I need a stereo system, and they'd buy it and they'd go plug it in. Well, there was this shift to, gosh, I want a home theater and I want some speakers throughout my house. Guess what happens? Really hard to inventory everything that you need as a dealer when your jobs are different each and every time. And so distribution was a much better model for that, because it was much easier for them to just go, hey, I need this for this job, rather than going, oh man, I need to buy some equipment for this job. But in order to get.
And it also opened up the whole installation business.
Yes.
That didn't exist before. That was a whole new business model.
It did not. And so, a lot of the reps saw this shift coming, and they were like, gosh, we need to open distribution companies to service this part of the market. The direct to manufacturer market was still there, but there were a lot of smaller custom installers that were better suited to distribution. So the reps started opening distribution companies. Well, one of the reps in Southern California had an idea of, hey, why don't we start partnering together to collaborate and start to pool some of our resources? And so they found reps in each territory, and we partnered. And it was my dad's relationships as to why we actually got involved in that. And when we partnered, what ended up happening is all of a sudden we went from, hey, we have distribution in Northern California or Southern California, to we have nationwide distribution into this channel, which a manufacturer cannot call on. It was too small, it was too fragmented, and it made no sense for a manufacturer to have their people try to service those dealers directly. Once we did that, what happened? Much stronger buying power. We became incredibly attractive to large manufacturers that wanted to get into the space. And so we started driving tons of volume because of that. We were able to bring in large lines that drove volume. We took a very value-added approach as well. So we did a lot of training, stayed in front of our clients on a consistent basis. We helped them, and we just took this approach of, gosh, if we can help you grow your business, our business is going to grow as a result of it. And that's exactly what happened. But all of this, the foundation of this was relationships. None of that would have happened if the relationships weren't there. So there was a lot of things. I'm just dropping a ton of stuff here, but there was a lot of things that came together.
You're speaking my language, dude. All right. Systems, relationships, collaboration, and nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, listener, what does Candace say all the time? I love it when my guests just back up what I preach. So systems, relationships, collaboration, and nurturing, that is the secret sauce to a small business being a big business. And you, with the collaboration piece of it, you don't have to grow into a mega corporation. You can work with other small businesses, other solopreneurs, to provide a package or a suite of products and services that is beautiful. I love collaboration, and I love the way that you guys. Well, was it the collaboration that was purchased by the bigger company?
Yes. So what they ended up doing was, each individual distributor was a partner in a company. And so what they ended up doing is they bought the overall company, and then they had to buy each individual distributor. So it was, and that was an amazing experience to watch unfold and just listen to everything that happened. Because we got bought by a public company, and so there was a lot of things going on at that point. But it was an amazing experience. But because of that, we all got a lot more money for our individual distribution companies than we would have otherwise.
Yeah.
Because they were much more valuable as a whole.
Exactly. Collaboration. It makes you look like you're a bigger dog than you are too when you collaborate with others. And what Tim and his crew did was they formed a corporation with the different distribution companies. You don't have to do that to collaborate. You can collaborate without forming a separate company.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about selling houses on a short sale, because I can imagine that is heartbreaking and frustrating, and so many. I mean, there's so many words, so many adjectives that I could use to describe what that must be like.
Yeah, it's so when I got into the business, I actually there was a gentleman in the real estate office that I joined who had been in the business for a little over a year, I think, at that time, and he was crushing it doing short sales, and he was willing to mentor people. And so I mentored under him, and he shared a lot of things that he was doing, and I just went out and started to do those things. Now, I will tell you, Candace, I was putting myself outside of my comfort zone every single day. The first time I knocked on somebody's door that was in foreclosure, I was freaking terrified. I'm like, what are these people going to say? Like, I had an idea of what I was going to say, but until you can have an idea of what you want to say, but until you actually put it out into practice and start doing it over and over again, it's just theory, right? And so I just started knocking on doors. Each day I'd look at the foreclosure list from the counties. I'd plan my route of where I was going to go, and I'd start knocking on doors. Sometimes people would answer, sometimes they wouldn't. If they wouldn't, I'm trying to remember. I think at the time I left a card. Sometimes I'd actually go there and the foreclosure notice was still on the door. So it was uncomfortable. But what I found was the more I put myself outside of my comfort zone, the larger it expanded. And after a while, I didn't really even think twice about it. Some of the stories that I heard, like you said, they were sad. People were going through hard times. The way I looked at it was I was just doing what I could to help them out of a tough situation. And it was a lot of work because, when you list a house that is a short sale, not only do you have a buyer and a seller, you're also putting a bank in the middle. And when we'd get an offer on a property, that would have to go to the bank. And there were negotiations back and forth with the bank on, will you accept this? And sometimes they were reasonable and sometimes they weren't. And if they weren't, deals didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you'd work real hard and to try and get things to the finish line, and then they never got there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times they did. But it was, I just, the thing that was really tough for me with real estate was I felt like I was always on, because it's like, hey, anybody I potentially meet that's a homeowner, like, could potentially be a client. I just could not shut that off. And I did not care for business to consumer business as much as I did business to business, that I was used to in the distribution world. And
Yeah.
so, when I started waking up, I heard somebody call it like the Sunday night syndrome, where like Sunday night, you're starting to go, oh my God, I got to wake up tomorrow and do this. Like I was feeling that way every damn day. And I'm like, this is not it. So,
Well,
and
and
that's not to say that real estate's a bad industry. It's not. It's a phenomenal industry. There are people that do extremely well, and there are plenty of people that love it. It just wasn't the right fit for me.
Yeah. Well, with B2B, you probably would have been more comfortable selling commercial real estate.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. And that I just can't even imagine. I mean, because the number of people that I saw move out of their houses in 2008 on my block, it was sad.
Yeah.
It was really sad. And most of them, it was because they had a bad mortgage and they couldn't afford their payments after the interest rates went up.
Yeah.
So let's just hope that lesson, I don't know. It's so sad. Anyway, okay. So real estate is a tough business, and door knocking is, wow. The fact that you door knocked was, a lot of people don't have a stomach for that. So congratulations. Okay. And so then you got into marketing, and that is a huge different thing than
Yes, it is.
door knocking, because, door knocking is marketing, but you did it without having to door knock. So talk about that.
Yeah, just so when I initially got involved in marketing, I was actually selling mobile applications at the time. Mobile apps were super hot, and I was going after schools. Schools at the time, I was working with elementaries, middles, high schools. At the time, you go to a school website on a mobile phone, it was a disaster. One, they have tons of information on their website that most people don't need. At the time, they were not mobile friendly, so you couldn't read it on a mobile device. So there was a need there. So I started working with schools, and we started to gain traction there. And then I'm trying to remember time frame wise, it was probably 2.5, 3 years in. Apple changed their publishing guidelines. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with the app space, you publish apps, you're publishing with Google and you're publishing with Apple, and you need to abide by their policies. Well, Apple changed their publishing guidelines, and a lot of app providers at that time were using app building platforms. So similar to like what Wix or Squarespace might be on the website, building app building platforms to publish. So overnight, nobody on these app building platforms could publish. And now they got through that, but it took about 3 months. And so at that point in time, I was like, man, this is not a good place to be. Like, I am super dependent on the whims of companies like Apple and Google. And
also school districts.
School districts, yes. And it's like, they don't care. This is a very vulnerable place to be. And so I started looking at how I could shift. And that's when I actually got involved with a company called Duct Tape Marketing. John Jantz over at Duct Tape Marketing has been in small business marketing for years.
That company's been around a long time, and they really are. They are. Well, it's been a long time since I've actually heard that. Are they still around?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Duct Tape Marketing really helped me. Following those two helped me market my business on the internet back, 15 years ago. So they really cool. I think it's cool. Tell me more.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of John's approach with marketing is you got to have a system, strategy before tactics, which so many people just jump right into the tactics. And so I figured that, mentoring under somebody like that would make a ton of sense. And a lot of Duct Tape's focus now is on certifying marketing consultants. And, there's I don't know how many consultants there are in the network, probably, 150, 200, something like that. So that's
and there's a lot of different folks certifying marketers too.
Yes.
So there's different, it's pick the one that you like the best.
Yeah. And so I was familiar with Duct Tape. I liked his approach. And so that's the path I went down. And, initially I was doing strategy and implementation. So offering, content marketing or SEO or email marketing, all the implementation of the actual strategy. And I've shifted because marketing is extremely broad at this point. There are a lot of different channels, a lot of tactics. What I'm good at is strategy, planning, and then overseeing the implementation and execution of those plans. So it took me a little bit to kind of figure that out. But once I did, that's the path I've gone down. So I focus on strategy, planning, and leadership, and then help guide and manage the people that are implementing, whether that's in-house teams, outsourced freelancers, outsourced agencies, or a combination of all of them. Somebody has to lead and guide those people to keep them on the same page and make sure that they're headed in the right direction. And that's the gap that I fill. And this kind of goes into, some of the fundamentals, Candace, right? And like so many people just want to jump in to take action with marketing. And because of that, they skip a lot of the fundamentals and wonder like, gosh, I'm doing all these marketing things and nothing's working. Well, it's because the vehicles you've chosen don't have the right fuel, or they don't have any fuel at all. Strategy and the fundamentals are the fuel. We got to get the fuel, then we can choose the vehicles, and then somebody's got to lead those efforts to make sure that the vehicles get to where they need to go.
So this is, most of the folks listening are solopreneurs, micropreneurs, or nano influencers. And I'm always harping on them about picking the right social media channels. So the social media channel is the fuel in this story. And if you're putting all your content on the wrong social media channel, you're not going to grow. So make sure you're doing your research on those social media channels and pick the right ones. How do you feel about that? Agree with me?
Yeah. So in my view,
God, he's not going to agree with me.
No, I do agree with you. Slight nuance though. With social media, I see social media as one of the vehicles. Now, what social media should you be on is dictated by a few things. Most importantly, who are your ideal clients? That's where every target market and your ideal clients within that market is where everything starts from a marketing standpoint. You cannot do anything unless you understand that first and make a choice, because the biggest mistake most businesses make is they target extremely broadly. I work with small business owners. Too broad, like far too broad. We've got to narrow it down, and we really need to hone in on the characteristics and the thoughts, the aspirations of your ideal clients within that market.
Well, small business could mean up to $5 million a year in income as well. So, $60,000 a year company versus $5 million a year company, extremely different companies.
Yes.
So small business is not a good not a good demographic.
Yeah, it's too broad. It's impossible. It's a target that you can't see. And there's no way that we're going to hit a target we can't see. So we've got to narrow it down. The biggest roadblock most people have when they think about narrowing down is, gosh, if I narrow it down, I'm going to lose business. But what happens when we narrow it down is we can get specific. And specificity is what helps us sell. And the reality is, Candace, most of us don't need that much business. We don't need thousands or tens of thousands of clients. We might need 10 or 100. Maybe I might even be generous there. A lot of us don't need that many clients. So why are we worried about this huge market? And the other reality is, when you narrow, it doesn't mean that other people aren't going to come to you. They're still going to come to you. At that point, you can make the choice whether you want to work with them or not. And if they're not a good fit, no problem. You can refer them to somebody else.
We're going to pivot just a little, because you just said the magic words. You can have 10 clients and have a successful business, but you can't have 10 clients and a successful business if you're undercharging for your services. Yep. So one of the ways that you can figure out what your pricing is and what your strategy is just to figure out how many clients you want, right? If you only want to work with 10 people a year, what do you need to charge those 10 people so that you're making enough money to cover your expenses and your lifestyle and, your savings for the future, and a little padding for, in case something goes wrong? How much do you need to charge those 10 people? And then based on how much you need to charge them, you can figure out, well, okay, who can afford that? That's one way to get there. That's just one way. There's more, but Tim sparked that idea. So thanks for sparking.
Yeah, no. And just to add to that, Candace, most of us drastically undercharge what we're worth. And so, look, I've been there. I know a ton of us are in that boat. And so, I think it's important to keep in mind the value that you're providing. What value are you providing to that business, and how much are they going to increase or save as a result of that? And you should be charging a commensurate amount of that. You also touched on, like, who can afford that, right? That's another big thing, right? Within your ideal clients, can your ideal clients afford to pay you? Do they see the value and the need for it, and can they afford to pay you? Those are two boxes that your ideal clients have to check off.
Nailed it. All right, let's circle back to failure, because I want to, you talked about how you had failures and successes, and you've touched on your failures and your successes, but I want to dig deeper into how can failure inform your success?
Yeah. I think the first really important thing is defining what failure means to you, right? For some people, failure is like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the road, right? And if that's how you view failure, then it's going to stop you in your tracks, right? For me, failure, and I can't honestly, Candace, I wish I could remember where the heck I saw this definition, but it stuck with me because I felt like it was one of the few empowering ways you can think about failure. So as failure is the opportunity to begin again with more experience and wisdom, right? It's a learning lesson, right? So it's not I hit a wall. It's a speed bump. It's a curve in the road. It's something I can learn from. What are the learning lessons and what am I going to do differently to move forward? That's that's how I view it. And so it doesn't stop me. It makes you pause for a minute so that you can take the learning lessons from it. But once you take the learning lessons from it, now you know what you can focus on moving forward and you just take the next steps. So that's what's helped me tremendously.
One of my colleagues, Marianne Roos, she says that I think she probably read this somewhere, but you can't move to the next chapter if you keep reading the last chapter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, how you've got to take what you know and move to the next thing. You can't just keep. That's not growth. Growth is not going in a circle and keep doing the same things over and over again. Growth is trying new things, and some of them don't work.
Yes.
Yeah. And the more things that you try that don't work, the better. I bring this up a lot, listener. I went axe throwing, and the first time I threw the axe, I did pretty good. I didn't hit the bullseye, but I did pretty good. I have a bad shoulder, so I couldn't throw it a lot, or else I would have hurt myself. But then I said, I should probably film this for my YouTube channel because I have some like 600 videos on my YouTube channel. I'm a YouTube whore, but I should probably film this for my YouTube channel. And so I got a friend of mine who's a videographer to film it, and because he was there with me. And that video of me failing to hit the target twice has more views on it than most other videos on my channel. And people like failure. But you know what? I got a great video. And the lesson here is don't be afraid to throw the axe if you can't hit the target. You had fun throwing the axe, didn't you? You learned something, didn't you? I learned how not to throw the axe. So there's just failure. Failure is good, and don't be afraid of failure because failure is the best teacher. Dig into that.
Yep. Well, and you touched on something super important. Most of the things we do, especially from a marketing standpoint, don't work.
Yeah.
It's all about testing, measuring, and learning.
And you could do the same thing 3 times and it works once, but not the other 2.
Yep. Yeah. Marketing is definitely not a set it and forget it activity. It's constantly evolving. Even the strategy side of it, that's another big roadblock. People are like, gosh, what if I choose this target market? Like I'm going down this path. It's like, no, you're not laying concrete here. I mean, it's not set in stone. You can change, but at some point you got to make a choice and you got to focus and go down that path to see what happens. And when you start to get information back, then you can continue to just make decisions and continue to iterate. But you gotta test, you gotta measure, learn from it, and keep pushing forward.
So I live in a 100-year-old house, and the street that I live on is probably, I'm going to say 140 years old. And they are tearing up the street because they have to replace the pipes. The pipes are lead, not the pipes that come into the house, but the pipes that leave the house are lead. So they're pulling them off and they're replacing them. And in order to do that, you got to tear up the street. So they have stripped the street down to the brick, the 140-year-old brick that's down there. And that brick isn't going anywhere. It is a strong, strong foundation. And then over the last 140 years, they've just been laying road on top of it. And more road on top of it. And then every once in a while they come through and they strip off the layers of road that aren't working anymore and they replace it with new road. But the foundation is 140 years old and it ain't going anywhere. Yeah. And that's marketing tactics right there. If you've got it, the foundation is your strategy.
Yes.
And the tactics are the layers of asphalt and concrete on top of it.
Yeah. That's another great way to look at it. Right? It's the foundation. You can't build your road. You can't build a house without a foundation. Well, you can, but it's not going to stay up very long.
Yeah.
Right. So nobody wants to build a house without a foundation. Your marketing is the same way. You need to have the foundation, which is the strategy, those fundamentals in place. Then you can start to put up the walls or put the layers of the street down. but you can't do that successfully. You can't market consistently um, and get good results without having that strategy in place
Well, and the
first.
materials change too. I mean, I'm just going to use this road analogy because it's a damn good one, right? The materials change.
Yes.
You know, we aren't using this. I mean, concrete's been around since Romans, right? But we aren't using the same formula for concrete that the Romans used.
Yep.
And we're not using the same formula for concrete that we used 50 years ago or 140 years ago. Or concrete and asphalt came in between those things because the formulas change, because materials change, because science and engineering changes, and you just keep making things better. And so little small tweaks in your marketing make things better. And sometimes you go backwards and you go, oh, wow, that really worked. Let me try that again. And it works again, even though it's kind of counterintuitive that it might. So it you know, that road analogy, sometimes I come up with brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Well, I mean, it's like you said, the materials change, but guess what? The fundamentals in any discipline do not.
yeah,
They're the
that
same.
brick road ain't going nowhere.
No. The
Yeah.
marketing fundamentals are the same today as they were 50 years ago, and they're not going to change 50 years from now. The tactics, right? The materials or the vehicles change.
Yeah.
The
Well,
fundamentals
it's
don't.
do you remember Periscope? Periscope was all the rage.
Periscope, Meerkat, Clubhouse. There are people still using Clubhouse, but not nearly as many as there were in the beginning, in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
The tactics change all the time. They're always changing, but the fundamentals don't.
Yeah.
Your target market, your message to that market, those are two fundamentals that, like, you got to have those in place no matter what the hell you're selling or marketing. You got to understand your target market, and you have to have a great message to that market that grabs their attention and their interest.
My clients who love TikTok and love Instagram, I'm harping on them all the time. Okay, you love Instagram, you love TikTok, you're putting those videos up there, but I hope you're downloading them and putting on the YouTube too, because YouTube isn't going away, and eventually TikTok or Instagram might.
Well, here's the other thing you got to think about too. So, because it's a great point, Candace, every single one of those channels is rented.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
do not own those. Goes back to when I was in the app business. My apps were on platforms I was renting. I didn't own those, and they controlled whether those were there or not. Same thing with social media. It's a rented channel. Nothing wrong with taking advantage of rented channels, but you want to get those people to channels that you own. What do you own? You own your website, podcast, email list. Your email list is key. Nobody can take that away from you. If you have to switch from one platform to another, you can. You own the list. Get people from channels you are renting to ones you own, so that if something happens to that, I mean, look, Twitter shut down President Trump. I mean, they'll shut down anybody. They don't care. So you have no idea. You may not be able to access Instagram tomorrow. If that happens, and you are heavily dependent on that, not a good place to be.
Yeah. And so if you're a podcaster, this is very important. Using one of those free podcast services is really not a smart idea. If you're going to pay for something, if you have a very limited budget, the thing that you should be paying for is the hosting of your podcast audio files. And then from there, put them on your own website that you own, not a free website, not a Wix site, but a WordPress site that's owned on a server that you own, but not own, but you're renting space on the server. What you own is the data that you put on the server. But don't use any of those services that may go away.
Yeah.
At least with a WordPress site that's on on a server space that you purchase and an IP address that you own, you can take the content and put it somewhere else. But on one of those Wix sites or one of those other sites, I can't remember all the other ones, but there's a lot of them.
There's a ton.
If they go away, your content goes away. So pay for the things that are important, and that's the real estate that you own. Don't be a renter when it comes to that. You can be a renter for a lot of things, but don't be a renter for your website, your podcast files, and your videos, there isn't a platform where you can put videos that you own them. But in terms of stability, YouTube's owned by Google, and Google's not going anywhere. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we need to start wrapping up. So we've talked a lot about different marketing tools, tips, and techniques, but do you have a favorite?
Oh man, there's so many out there. I'm going to tell you one of my favorite tools, and this, you can use this for marketing, you can use it for sales, is screen capture software called Loom. Loom. I use it every single day. There are other services like it, but from a keeping in touch with people, from a relationship building standpoint, sending an email that has a video embedded in it rather than just audio helps you stand out. It can be a great way to just stay in front of people. It's a great way. I use it to stay in front of my team. If I can't write it in a sentence or two, it's much faster to shoot a Loom video and embed it. So that is honestly, it's one of my favorite tools. It's not revolutionary. It's not a cool, hey, I can automate all this stuff. But damn, it's a cool tool. So
I am a big fan of, I don't use Loom, I use a different service, but I do the same thing. When somebody asks me a question and the answer is complicated and it's just easier for me to hop on a video and screen share and show them, click, 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 here's how it's done, and send the video, I will do that all day long. Because writing out the instructions, I'm just too lazy for that.
Well, it takes like 10 times as long, depending on how long of a video it is, to actually type it. And you're sitting there, you're like, oh my God, 30 minutes go by and I could have shot a 1 or 2 minute video and been done with it. So it's just, it's an amazing tool. And it's, like you said, look, they have a free version, but even the paid version is like $100 a year for, I mean, it's like for the time that you save, it's well worth $100.
Yeah, and Loom is pretty. It's of all the different screen capture, video capture services out there, Loom is a good one. It's not the one I use because I have one that's integrated with something else, but that works better for me. But I do have a Loom account and I've enjoyed using Loom. So I'm not saying not to use Loom. I'm just saying that that's not the one I use. Anyway, yeah, I'm a big fan of videos too, and it really is. I mean, if you can make a 2-minute video to answer the question, plus the people that appreciate it. I mean, because they can watch you. Watching and reading are two different things. And I don't know about you, but when I was in school, the teachers that I learned the best from were the ones that actually showed us how to do things rather than tell us.
Yeah.
You know, I learned all day long from the ones who would actually show. Math was easy because the instructors would sit there and show you how to do the problems over and over and over again on the board until you got it. Show and tell. Show and tell is magical. All right, this is my favorite part of the interview. It's your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
Oh man, Candace, this is not going to be super revolutionary here, but I like to keep things as simple as possible, and I think it's very easy for us to overlook the small things. So I'm just going to say, look, I was able to get out of bed this morning. Okay, I got out of bed. I exercised. I meditated. I got one of my daughters off to school. Man, that's good stuff. I am grateful for that. That is not something that everybody can do. So I'm just going to focus on the little things today, and that's what I'm most grateful for.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, where we help DIY marketers attract raving fans and repeat buyers. Don't forget to check out the show notes at gratitudegeek.com for links to all the resources mentioned in this episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Solely. I'm Candace Rodarte, reminding you that gratitude is like manure. It's just a pile of poo until you spread it around. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.
I know